Should members of the House of Representatives who give birth to a child be allowed to have some amount of time where they proxy vote so they can continue to work while they recover and bond with their newborn baby? I feel that this is not a political issue. Let me know in the comments, though, where you land on this, because apparently it maybe is. You see, Paulina Luna joined with another woman, and they were planning to put forward this form of legislation, and this appeared to frighten Mike Johnson. So Mike Johnson, when coming up with a rule, which is basically laying out the agenda of what they will vote for the week in the House, he added in verbiage that they would not be allowed to put forward anything related to proxy voting, which would prevent proxy voting for pregnant women to be discussed in the House. After this was done, every Democrat and 9 Republicans voted against the rule. After that happened, Mike Johnson responded with this: a handful of Republicans just joined every House Democrat to take down a rule. This means we can't take any further action on President Trump's agenda this week. No SAVE Act, no vote to address rogue judges attacking Trump, no votes to repeal Biden regulations. And there's some community notes. This rule also killed a proposal that would let new parents in Congress vote by proxy. That's why it failed. Nothing prevents Speaker Johnson proposing a new rule without that provision. He also does not need to pass a rule to bring up the SAVE Act. Yes, Mike Johnson is canceling the House for the week. Everyone take the whole week off because he doesn't like that he lost a vote. Now, this is also a very big deal because there's been an issue. You see, Byron Donalds is a man who is very, very big against proxy voting, complained about it constantly. And then, once it was no longer allowed, there are claims that he proxy voted anyway so he could appear on a television show. And many of these Republicans that are against proxy voting, if you go back and look at voting records, actually did proxy voting themselves during COVID far more often than the Democrats. They don't want to actually have to go in person. And Paulina Luna has responded along with other Republicans because they don't like the way Mike Johnson is talking. What they are saying is that they are, in fact, pushing for Donald Trump's agenda. Because Donald Trump's agenda, as he likes to call himself the fertility president, I don't know why, but he does. And because he does that, they are saying that supporting motherhood and women choosing to have children should be Trump's agenda. With that being said, I do want to mention that a bunch of experts in vitro fertilization who work for the federal government were fired today, but we're going to put that aside, that it is with Trump's agenda to allow proxy voting. And this is where we're going to have a lot of issues. Because what is Trump's agenda according to Republicans? Because Mike Johnson here, it's going against judges. It's repealing Biden regulations, which I'm sure the others agree with, the other Republicans. But they're saying it's also the things he promises, like helping families and supporting more families and more children giving birth. It's very interesting when you have a party suggesting that they need to be more pro-life and encourage people to have children, but then take actions to make it so you don't want those children. For example, cutting funding to food for children, or cutting healthcare, or like in Florida, if you didn't know, they are lowering regulations to try to encourage children to work jobs later at night, get rid of hour limits so that, take over, I'm assuming, positions that can't fill with unskilled labor who has fled the state. And I think this is an issue that's going to continue to evolve. Because it should be bipartisan that you want people to feel secure enough to have a family and to have kids. But a lot of what's happened isn't going to do that. Are you going to want to have a child if you're worried about the Department of Education being dissolved? Are you going to want to have a child if you are worried we may end up in war with Canada, Greenland, Panama? If you believe the supposed leak from the Pentagon with Elon Musk going, China? Are you going to want to do that? Are you going to want to have a child if supports for having those children, especially if you don't have much money, are now stripped away? And the thing is, allowing proxy voting for new mothers in the house, it even affected such a small number of people. It's like 2 or 3 women right now, total in the house, in all of America, really, that would be affected by this change. And that would be pro-family for 2 people, and that was too much. But we need to spend millions of dollars and constant time on the airwaves because a state might have 1 transgender athlete. And they want to push also that not allowing a child to socially transition should be a thing, even though, again, it's a small number of children, and they're just making their lives worse. And again, maybe some people say, I don't want to have a child right now because I'm worried what if they end up being trans and they have to deal with these new laws or these new actions, these new things happening. So we're coming to a situation where a party that is trying to run on pro-family values can't even get behind basic pro-family values. In my opinion, that can't bode well. Because if you can't agree on that for a couple pregnant women every few years in the house, right? If that's too much, why would you trust their agenda when it comes to pregnant women on a national scale? Just a thought. Something I want to know. Because I know a lot of people that watch my channel don't agree with me politically. A lot of you do, a lot of you don't. Even when I did literally just political content, I had a lot of people that didn't agree with me politically that would watch just to have a different perspective. And I find it fascinating sometimes to go through the comments and see what people think. Because a lot of times, there are aspects that the actual voters do not disagree on. They really don't disagree on the issue. But framing it like someone like Mike Johnson is doing might not let them understand that. If you go below this and read individuals, you can find it on Twitter. This is on his official government page. If you go below it, there will be people that had no idea until this community vote came why it failed. They thought suddenly rogue Republicans had come out to destroy Trump. And that's why it's so important to look into stories like this and look into things. Because I made this whole video basically supporting something that Paulina Luna did. I think she's a lunatic. I'm not going for a pun there. I'm just going to say that I compare her to George Santos. And you can do your own Googling for that. When it comes to her past. But even then, I can say I agree that new mothers should be allowed to have kids. And I want to end off with this, for anyone that made it this far. Out of all the Republicans in the House, the only woman who voted for this was Paulina Luna. And I don't think for a second only one woman in the House supports allowing this proxy vote. I think because Mike Johnson put it as a rule, they didn't want to get called out like him. And they were willing to put their family values aside in the hopes to retain more power. And that's a little frightening, I would think.